Chapter 111. The Pacific. When gliding by the Bahi Isles we emerged at last upon the great South Sea. Were it not for other things, I could have greeted my dear Pacific with uncounted thanks, for now the long supplication of my youth was answered. That serene ocean rolled eastwards from me 1,000 leagues of blue. There is, one knows not what sweet mystery about this sea, whose gently awful stirrings seem to speak of some hidden soul beneath, like those fabled undulations of the Ephesian sod over the buried evangelist St. John. And meet it is, that over these sea pastures, wide-rolling watery prairies, and potters' fields of all 4 continents, the waves should rise and fall, and ebb and flow unceasingly. For here, millions of mixed shades and shadows, drowned dreams, somnambulisms, reveries, all that we call lives and souls, lie dreaming still, tossing like slumberers in their beds, the ever-rolling waves but made so by their restlessness. To any meditative Magian rover, this serene Pacific, once beheld, must ever after be the sea of his adoption. It rolls the inmost waters of the world, the Indian Ocean and Atlantic being but its arms. The same waves wash the moles of the new-built Californian towns, but yesterday planted by the recentest race of men, and lay the faded but still gorgeous skirts of Asiatic lands, older than Abraham, while all between float milky ways of coral isles, and low-lying, endless, unknown archipelagos, and impenetrable Japans. Thus this mysterious, divine Pacific zones the world's whole bulk about, makes all coasts one bay to it, seems the tide-beating heart of earth. Lifted by those eternal swells, you needs must own the seductive god, bow your head to Pan. But few thoughts of Pan stirred Ahab's brain, as standing like an iron statue at his accustomed place beside the mizzen rigging, with one nostril he unthinkingly snuffed the sugary musk from the Bahi Isles, in whose sweet woods mild lovers must be walking, and with the other consciously inhaled the salt breath of the new-found sea, that sea in which the hated white whale must even then be swimming. Launched at length upon these almost final waters, and gliding towards the Japanese cruising ground, the old man's purpose intensified itself. His firm lips met like the lips of a vice. The delta of his forehead's veins swelled like overladen brooks. In his very sleep, his ringing cry ran through the vaulted hull. "Stern all! The white whale spouts thick blood." Chapter 112. The Blacksmith. Availing himself of the mild, summer cool weather that now reigned in these latitudes, and in preparation for the peculiarly active pursuits shortly to be anticipated, Perth, the begrimed, blistered old blacksmith, had not removed his portable forge to the hold again after concluding his contributory work for Ahab's leg, but still retained it on deck, fast lashed to ringbolts by the foremast, being now almost incessantly invoked by the head men, and harpooneers, and bowsmen to do some little job for them, altering, or repairing, or new shaping their various weapons and boat furniture. Often he would be surrounded by an eager circle, all waiting to be served, holding boat spades, pike heads, harpoons, and lances, and jealously watching his every sooty movement as he toiled. Nevertheless, this old man's was a patient hammer wielded by a patient arm. No murmur, no impatience, no petulance did come from him. Silent, slow, and solemn, bowing over still further his chronically broken back, he toiled away, as if toil were life itself, and the heavy beating of his hammer the heavy beating of his heart. And so it was Dot, most miserable. A peculiar walk in this old man, a certain slight but painful appearing yawing in his gait, had at an early period of the voyage excited the curiosity of the mariners, and to the importunity of their persistent questionings he had finally given in, and so it came to pass that every one now knew the shameful story of his wretched fate. Belated, and not innocently, one bitter winter's midnight, on the road running between 2 country towns, the blacksmith half stupidly felt the deathly numbness stealing over him, and sought refuge in a leaning, dilapidated barn. The issue was the loss of the extremities of both feet. Out of this revelation, part by part, at last came out the 4 acts of the gladness, and the one long, and as yet uncatastrophed 5th act of the grief of his life's drama. He was an old man, who, at the age of nearly 60, had postponedly encountered that thing in sorrow's technicals called ruin. He had been an artisan of famed excellence, and with plenty to do, owned a house and garden, embraced a youthful, daughter-like, loving wife, and 3 blithe, ruddy children, every Sunday went to a cheerful-looking church, planted in a grove. But one night, under cover of darkness, and further concealed in a most cunning disguisement, a desperate burglar slid into his happy home, and robbed them all of everything. And darker yet to tell, the blacksmith himself did ignorantly conduct this burglar into his family's heart. It was the bottle conjurer. Upon the opening of that fatal cork, forth flew the fiend, and shriveled up his home. Now, for prudent, most wise, and economic reasons, the blacksmith's shop was in the basement of his dwelling, but with a separate entrance to it, so that always had the young and loving healthy wife listened with no unhappy nervousness, but with vigorous pleasure, to the stout ringing of her young-armed old husband's hammer, whose reverberations, muffled by passing through the floors and walls, came up to her, not unsweetly, in her nursery, and so, to stout labor's iron lullaby, the blacksmith's infants were rocked to slumber. Oh, woe on woe! O death, why canst thou not sometimes be timely? Hadst thou taken this old blacksmith to thyself ere his full ruin came upon him, then had the young widow had a delicious grief, and her orphans a truly venerable, legendary sire to dream of in their after years, and all of them a care-killing competency. But death plucked down some virtuous elder brother, on whose whistling daily toil solely hung the responsibilities of some other family, and left the worse than useless old man standing, till the hideous rot of life should make him easier to harvest. Why tell the whole? The blows of the basement hammer every day grew more and more between, and each blow every day grew fainter than the last. The wife sat frozen at the window, with tearless eyes, glitteringly gazing into the weeping faces of her children. The bellows fell. The forge choked up with cinders. The house was sold. The mother dived down into the long churchyard grass. Her children twice followed her thither, and the houseless, familyless old man staggered off a vagabond in crape, his every woe unreverenced, his gray head a scorn to flaxen curls. Death seems the only desirable sequel for a career like this. But death is only a launching into the region of the strange untried. It is but the first salutation to the possibilities of the immense remote, the wild, the watery, the unshored. Therefore, to the death-longing eyes of such men, who still have left in them some interior compunctions against suicide, does the all-contributed and all-receptive ocean alluringly spread forth his whole plain of unimaginable, taking terrors, and wonderful, new life adventures, and from the hearts of infinite Pacifics, the 1,000 mermaids sing to them. Come hither, broken-hearted. Here is another life without the guilt of intermediate death. Here are wonders supernatural, without dying for them. Come hither. Bury thyself in a life which, to your now equally abhorred and abhorring landed world, is more oblivious than death. Come hither. Put up thy gravestone, too, within the churchyard, and come hither till we marry thee. Hearkening to these voices, east and west, by early sunrise, and by fall of eve, the blacksmith's soul responded, I come. And so Perth went a-wailing. Chapter 113. The Forge. With matted beard, and swathed in a bristling sharkskin apron, about midday, Perth was standing between his forge and anvil, the latter placed upon an ironwood log, with one hand holding a pike head in the coals, and with the other at his forge's lungs, when Captain Ahab came along, carrying in his hand a small rusty-looking leathern bag. While yet a little distance from the forge, moody Ahab paused, till at last Perth, withdrawing his iron from the fire, began hammering it upon the anvil, the red mass sending off the sparks in thick hovering flights, some of which flew close to Ahab. Are these thy mother Carrie's chickens, Perth? They are always flying in thy wake. Birds of good omen, too, but not to all. Look here, they burn. But thou livest among them without a scorch. Because I am scorched all over, Captain Ahab, answered Perth, resting for a moment on his hammer. I am past scorching. Not easily canst thou scorch a scar. Well, well, no more. Thy shrunk voice sounds too calmly, sanely woeful to me. In no paradise myself, I am impatient of all misery in others that is not mad. Thou shouldst go mad, Blacksmith. Say, why dost thou not go mad? How canst thou endure without being mad? Do the heavens yet hate thee, that thou canst not go mad? What wert thou making there? Welding an old pike-head, sir. There were seams and dents in it. And canst thou make it all smooth again, Blacksmith, after such hard usage as it had? I think so, sir. And I suppose thou canst smooth almost any seams and dents. Never mind how hard the metal, Blacksmith. Aye, sir, I think I can, all seams and dents but one. Look ye here, then, cried Ahab, passionately advancing, and leaning with both hands on Perth's shoulders. Look ye here, can ye smooth out a seam like this, Blacksmith? Sweeping one hand across his ribbed brow. If thou couldst, Blacksmith, glad enough would I lay my head upon thy anvil, and feel thy heaviest hammer between my eyes. Answer, canst thou smooth this seam? Oh, that is the one, sir. Said I not all seams and dents but one? Aye, Blacksmith, it is the one. Aye, man, it is unsmoothable, for though thou only seest it here in my flesh, it has worked down into the bone of my skull, that is all wrinkles. But away with child's play, no more gaffs and pikes today. Look ye here, jingling the leathern bag, as if it were full of gold coins. I, too, want a harpoon made, one that 1,000 yoke of fiends could not part, Perth, something that will stick in a whale like his own fin bone. There's the stuff, flinging the pouch upon the anvil. Look ye, Blacksmith, these are the gathered nail stubs of the steel shoes of racing horses. Horseshoe stubs, sir? Why, Captain Ahab, thou hast here, then, the best and stubbornest stuff we blacksmiths ever work. I know it, old man. These stubs will weld together like glue from the melted bones of murderers. Quick! Forge me the harpoon. And forge me first 12 rods for its shank, then wind and twist, and hammer these 12 together like the yarns and strands of a tow line. Quick! I'll blow the fire. When at last the 12 rods were made, Ahab tried them, one, by spiraling them, with his own hand, round a long, heavy iron bolt. A flaw! Rejecting the last one. Work that over again, Perth. This done, Perth was about to begin welding the 12 into one, when Ahab stayed his hand, and said he would weld his own iron. As, then, with regular, gasping hems, he hammered on the anvil, Perth passing to him the glowing rods, one after the other, and the hard-pressed forge shooting up its intense straight flame, the Parsee passed silently, and bowing over his head towards the fire, seemed invoking some curse or some blessing on the toil. But as Ahab looked up, he slid aside. "What's that bunch of lucifers dodging about there for?" muttered Stubb, looking on from the forecastle. "That Parsee smells fire like a fusee, and smells of it himself, like a hot musket's powder-pan." At last the shank, in one complete rod, received its final heat, and as Perth, to temper it, plunged it all hissing into the cask of water near by, the scalding steam shot up into Ahab's bent face. "Wouldst thou brand me, Perth?" wincing for a moment with the pain. "Have I been but forging my own branding iron, then? Pray God, not that, yet I fear something, Captain Ahab. Is not this harpoon for the white whale? For the white fiend? But now for the barbs. Thou must make them thyself, man. Here are my razors, the best of steel. Here, and make the barbs sharp as the needle sleet of the icy sea." For a moment, The old blacksmith eyed the razors as though he would fain not use them. "Take them, man, I have no need for them, for I now neither shave, sup, nor pray till, but here, to work." Fashioned at last into an arrowy shape, and welded by Perth to the shank, the steel soon pointed the end of the iron, and as the blacksmith was about giving the barbs their final heat, prior to tempering them, he cried to Ahab to place the water cask near. "No, no, no water for that. I want it of the true death temper. Ahoy there! Tashtego, Queequeg, Degu. What say ye, pagans? Will ye give me as much blood as will cover this barb?" Holding it high up, a cluster of dark nods replied, "Yes." 3 punctures were made in the heathen flesh, and the white whale's barbs were then tempered. "Ego non baptizo te in nomine Patris, sed in nomine Diaboli," deliriously howled Ahab, as the malignant iron scorchingly devoured the baptismal blood. Now, mustering the spare poles from below, and selecting one of hickory, with the bark still investing it, Ahab fitted the end to the socket of the iron. A coil of new towline was then unwound, and some fathoms of it taken to the windlass, and stretched to a great tension. Pressing his foot upon it, till the rope hummed like a harp-string, then eagerly bending over it, and seeing no strandings, Ahab exclaimed, "Good! And now for the seizings." At one extremity the rope was unstranded, and the separate spread yarns were all braided and woven round the socket of the harpoon. The pole was then driven hard up into the socket. From the lower end the rope was traced halfway along the pole's length, and firmly secured so, with intertwistings of twine. This done, pole, iron, and rope, like the 3 fates, remained inseparable, and Ahab moodily stalked away with the weapon, the sound of his ivory leg, and the sound of the hickory pole, both hollowly ringing along every plank. But ere he entered his cabin, light, unnatural, half bantering, yet most piteous sound was heard. "Oh, Pip! Thy wretched laugh, thy idle but unresting eye, all thy strange mummeries not unmeaningly blended with the black tragedy of the melancholy ship, and mocked it." Chapter 114. The Gilder. Penetrating further and further into the heart of the Japanese cruising ground, the Pequod was soon all astir in the fishery. Often, in mild, pleasant weather, for 12, 15, 18, and 20 hours on the stretch, they were engaged in the boats, steadily pulling, or sailing, or paddling after the whales, or for an interlude of 60 or 70 minutes calmly awaiting their uprising, though with but small success for their pains. At such times, under an abetted sun, afloat all day upon smooth, slow-heaving swells, seated in his boat, light as a birch canoe, and so sociably mixing with the soft waves themselves that like Hearthstone cats they purr against the gunwale, these are the times of dreamy quietude, when beholding the tranquil beauty and brilliancy of the ocean's skin, one forgets the tiger heart that pants beneath it, and would not willingly remember that this velvet paw but conceals a remorseless fawn. These are the times when in his whaleboat the rover softly feels a certain filial, confident, land-like feeling towards the sea, that he regards it as so much flowery earth, and the distant ship revealing only the tops of her masts, seems struggling forward, not through high rolling waves, but through the tall grass of a rolling prairie, as when the western emigrants' horses only show their erected ears, while their hidden bodies widely wade through the amazing verdure. The long-drawn virgin valleys, the mild blue hillsides, as over these there steals the hush, the hum, you almost swear that play-weary children lie sleeping in these solitudes, in some glad Maytime, when the flowers of the woods are plucked. And all this mixes with your most mystic mood, so that fact and fancy, halfway meeting, interpenetrate, and form one seamless whole. Nor did such soothing scenes, however temporary, fail of at least as temporary an effect on Ahab. But if these secret golden keys did seem to open in him his own secret golden treasuries, yet did his breath upon them prove but tarnishing. Oh, grassy glades! Oh, ever vernal endless landscapes in the soul. In ye, though long parched by the dead drought of the earthly life, in ye, men yet may roll, like young horses in new morning clover, and for some few fleeting moments, feel the cool dew of the life immortal on them. Would to God these blessed calms would last! But the mingling threads of life are woven by warp and woof, calms crossed by storms, a storm for every calm. There is no steady unretracing progress in this life. We do not advance through fixed gradations, and at the last one pause. Through infancy's unconscious spell, boyhood's thoughtless faith, adolescence doubt, the common doom, then skepticism, then disbelief, resting at last in manhood's pondering repose of if. But once gone through, we trace the round again, and are infants, boys, and men, and ifs eternally. Where lies the final harbor, whence we unmoor no more? In what rapt ether sails the world, of which the weariest will never weary? Where is the foundling's father hidden? Our souls are like those orphans whose unwed mothers die in bearing them. The secret of our paternity lies in their grave, and we must there to learn it. And that same day, too, gazing far down from his boat's side into that same golden sea, Starbuck lowly murmured, "Loveliness unfathomable, as ever lover saw in his young bride's eye, tell me not of thy teeth-tiered sharks, and thy kidnapping cannibal ways. Let faith oust fact, let fancy oust memory. I look deep down and do believe." And Stubb, fish-like, with sparkling scales, leaped up in that same golden light. I am Stubb, and Stubb has his history, but here Stubb takes oaths that he has always been jolly. Chapter 115. The Pequod Meets the Bachelor. And jolly enough were the sights and the sounds that came bearing down before the wind, some few weeks after Ahab's harpoon had been welded. It was a Nantucket ship, the Bachelor, which had just wedged in her last cask of oil and bolted down her bursting hatches, and now, in glad holiday apparel, was joyously, though somewhat vaingloriously, sailing round among the widely separated ships on the ground, previous to pointing her prow for home. The 3 men at her masthead wore long streamers of narrow red bunting at their hats. From the stern, a whaleboat was suspended, bottom down, and hanging captive from the bowsprit was seen the long lower jaw of the last whale they had slain. Signals, ensigns, and jacks of all colors were flying from her rigging on every side. Sideways lashed in each of her 3 basket tops were 2 barrels of sperm, above which, in her topmast crosstrees, you saw slender breakers of the same precious fluid, and nailed to her main truck was a brazen lamp. As was afterwards learned, the Bachelor had met with the most surprising success, all the more wonderful, for that while cruising in the same seas numerous other vessels had gone entire months without securing a single fish. Not only had barrels of beef and bread been given away to make room for the far more valuable sperm, but additional supplemental casks had been bartered for, from the ships she had met, and these were stowed along the deck, and in the captain's and officers' staterooms. Even the cabin table itself had been knocked into kindling wood, and the cabin mess dined off the broad head of an oil butt, lashed down to the floor for a centerpiece. In the forecastle, the sailors had actually caulked and pitched their chests, and filled them. It was humorously added that the cook had clapped a head on his largest boiler, and filled it, that the steward had plugged his spare coffee-pot and filled it, that the harpooneers had headed the sockets of their irons and filled them, that indeed everything was filled with sperm, except the captain's pantaloons pockets, and those he reserved to thrust his hands into, in self-complacent testimony of his entire satisfaction. As this glad ship of good luck bore down upon the moody Pequod, the barbarian sound of enormous drums came from her forecastle, and drawing still nearer, a crowd of her men were seen standing round her huge tripods, which, covered with the parchment-like poke or stomach skin of the black fish, gave forth a loud roar to every stroke of the clenched hands of the crew. On the quarter-deck, the mates and harpooneers were dancing with the olive-hued girls who had eloped with them from the Polynesian Isles, while suspended in an ornamented boat, firmly secured aloft between the foremast and mainmast, 3 Long Island negroes, with glittering fiddle bows of whale ivory, were presiding over the hilarious jig. Meanwhile, others of the ship's company were tumultuously busy at the masonry of the try-works, from which the huge pots had been removed. You would have almost thought they were pulling down the cursed Bastille, such wild cries they raised, as the now useless brick and mortar were being hurled into the sea. Lord and master over all the scene, the captain stood erect on the ship's elevated quarter-deck, so that the whole rejoicing drama was full before him, and seemed merely contrived for his own individual diversion. And Ahab, he too was standing on his quarter-deck, shaggy and black, with a stubborn gloom, and as the 2 ships crossed each other's wakes, one all jubilations for things past, the other all forebodings as to things to come, their 2 captains in themselves impersonated the whole striking contrast of the scene. "Come aboard! Come aboard!" cried the gay bachelor's commander, lifting a glass and a bottle in the air. "Hast seen the white whale?" gritted Ahab in reply. "No, only heard of him, but don't believe in him at all," said the other good-humoredly. "Come aboard. Thou art too damned jolly. Sail on. Hast lost any men?" "Not enough to speak of. 2 islanders, that's all. But come aboard, old hearty, come along. I'll soon take that black from your brow. Come along, will ye? Merry's the play. A full ship and homeward bound." "How wondrous familiar is a fool," muttered Ahab, then aloud, "Thou art a full ship and homeward bound, thou sayest. Well then, call me an empty ship and outward bound. So go thy ways, and I will mine. Forward there! Set all sail, and keep her to the wind." And thus, while the one ship went cheerily before the breeze, the other stubbornly fought against it, and so the 2 vessels parted, the crew of the Pequod looking with grave, lingering glances towards the receding Bachelor, but the Bachelor's men never heeding their gaze for the lively revelry they were in. And as Ahab, leaning over the taffrail, eyed the homeward-bound craft, he took from his pocket a small vial of sand, and then looking from the ship to the vial, seemed thereby bringing 2 remote associations together, for that vial was filled with Nantucket soundings. Chapter 116. The Dying Whale. Not seldom in this life, when, on the right side, fortune's favorites sail close by us, we, though all adrift before, catch somewhat of the rushing breeze, and joyfully feel our bagging sails fill out. So seemed it with the Pequod. For next day, after encountering the gay Bachelor, whales were seen and 4 were slain, and one of them by Ahab. It was far down the afternoon, and when all the spearings of the crimson fight were done, and floating in the lovely sunset sea and sky, sun and whale both stilly died together, then such a sweetness and such plaintiveness, such enwreathing orisons curled up in that rosy air, that it almost seemed as if far over from the deep green convent valleys of the Manila Isles, the Spanish land breeze, wantonly turned sailor, had gone to sea, freighted with these vesper hymns. Soothed again, but only soothed to deeper gloom, Ahab, who had sterned off from the whale, sat intently watching his final wanings from the now tranquil boat. For that strange spectacle observable in all sperm whales dying, the turning sunwards of the head, and so expiring, that strange spectacle, beheld of such a placid evening, somehow to Ahab conveyed a wondrousness unknown before. He turns and turns him to it, how slowly, but how steadfastly, his homage rendering and invoking brow, with his last dying motions. He too worships fire, most faithful, broad, baronial vassal of the sun. Oh, that these 2 favoring eyes should see these 2 favoring sights! Look! Here, far waterlocked, beyond all hum of human weal or woe, in these most candid and impartial seas, where to traditions no rocks furnish tablets, where for long Chinese ages the billows have still rolled on speechless and unspoken to, as stars that shine upon the Niger's unknown source. Here, too, life dies sunwards full of faith, but see! No sooner dead then death whirls round the corpse, and it heads some other way. O, thou dark Hindu half of nature, who of drowned bones hast builded thy separate throne somewhere in the heart of these unverdured seas, thou art an infidel, thou queen, and too truly speakest to me in the wide slaughtering typhoon, and the hushed burial of its after calm. Nor has this thy whale sunwards turned his dying head, and then gone round again, without a lesson to me. O trebly hooped and welded hip of power! O high aspiring, rainbowed jet, that one strivest, this one jettest all in vain. In vain, O whale, dost thou seek intercedings with yon all-quickening sun, that only calls forth life, but gives it not again. Yet dost thou, darker half, rock me with a prouder, if a darker faith. All thy unnameable imminglings float beneath me here. I am buoyed by breaths of once living things, exhaled as air, but water now. Then hail, forever hail, O sea, in whose eternal tossings the wild fowl finds his only rest. Born of earth, yet suckled by the sea, though hill and valley mothered me, ye billows are my foster brothers. Chapter 117. The Whale Watch. The 4 whales slain that evening had died wide apart. One, far to windward. One, less distant, to leeward. One ahead, one astern. These last 3 were brought alongside ere nightfall. But the windward one could not be reached till morning. And the boat that had killed it lay by its side all night, and that boat was Ahab's. The wave-pole was thrust upright into the dead whale's spout hole, and the lantern hanging from its top cast a troubled flickering glare upon the black, glossy back, and far out upon the midnight waves, which gently chafed the whale's broad flank, like soft surf upon a beach. Ahab and all his boat's crew seemed asleep, but the Parsee, who, crouching in the bow, sat watching the sharks that spectrally played round the whale, and tapped the light cedar planks with their tails. A sound like the moaning in squadrons over asphaltites of unforgiven ghosts of Gomorrah ran shuddering through the air. Started from his slumbers, Ahab face to face saw the Parsee, and hooped round by the gloom of the night they seemed the last men in a flooded world. "I have dreamed it again," said he. "Of the hearses? Have I not said, old man, that neither hearse nor coffin can be thine? And who are hearse that die on the sea? But I said, old man, that ere thou couldst die on this voyage, 2 hearses must verily be seen by thee on the sea, the first not made by mortal hands, and the visible wood of the last one must be grown in America. Aye, aye. A strange sight that, Parsee, a hearse and its plumes floating over the ocean with the waves for the pallbearers. Ha! Such a sight we shall not soon see. Believe it or not, thou canst not die till it be seen, old man. And what was that saying about thyself? Though it come to the last, I shall still go before thee thy pilot. And when thou art so gone before, if that ever befall, then ere I can follow, thou must still appear to me, to pilot me still, was it not so? Well then, did I believe all ye say, O my pilot? I have here 2 pledges that I shall yet slay Moby Dick and survive it. Take another pledge, old man, said the Parsee, as his eyes lighted up like fireflies in the gloom. Hemp only can kill thee. The gallows, ye mean not. I am immortal then, on land and on sea, cried Ahab, with a laugh of derision. Immortal on land and on sea. Both were silent again as one man. The gray dawn came on, and the slumbering crew arose from the boat's bottom, and ere noon the dead whale was brought to the ship. Chapter 118. The Quadrant. The season for the line at length drew near, and every day when Ahab, coming from his cabin, cast his eyes aloft, the vigilant helmsman would ostentatiously handle his spokes, and the eager mariners quickly run to the braces, and would stand there with all their eyes centrally fixed on the nailed doubloon, impatient for the order to point the ship's prow for the equator. In good time the order came. It was hard upon high noon, and Ahab, seated in the bows of his high-hoisted boat, was about taking his wonted daily observation of the sun to determine his latitude. Now, in that Japanese sea, the days in summer are as freshets of effulgences. That unblinkingly vivid Japanese sun seems the blazing focus of the glassy ocean's immeasurable burning glass. The sky looks lacquered, clouds there are none, the horizon floats, and this nakedness of unrelieved radiance is as the insufferable splendors of God's throne. Well that Ahab's quadrant was furnished with colored glasses, through which to take sight of that solar fire. So, swinging his seated form to the roll of the ship, and with his astrological-looking instrument placed to his eye, he remained in that posture for some moments to catch the precise instant when the sun should gain its precise meridian. Meantime, while his whole attention was absorbed, the Parsee was kneeling beneath him on the ship's deck, and with face thrown up like Ahab's, was eyeing the same sun with him. Only the lids of his eyes half hooded their orbs, and his wild face was subdued to an earthly passionlessness. At length the desired observation was taken, and with his pencil upon his ivory leg, Ahab soon calculated what his latitude must be at that precise instant. Then, falling into a moment's reverie, he again looked up towards the sun and murmured to himself, "Thou Seamark, thou high and mighty pilot, thou tellest me truly where I am, but canst thou cast the least hint where I shall be? Or canst thou tell where some other thing besides me is this moment living? Where is Moby Dick? This instant thou must be eyeing him. These eyes of mine look into the very eye that is even now beholding him. Aye, and into the eye that is even now equally beholding the objects on the unknown, thither side of thee, thou sun." Then gazing at his quadrant, and handling, one after the other, its numerous cabalistical contrivances, he pondered again and muttered, "Foolish toy! Baby's plaything of haughty admirals, and commodores, and captains! The world brags of thee, of thy cunning and might. But what after all canst thou do, but tell the poor, pitiful point, where thou thyself happenest to be on this wide planet, and the hand that holds thee? No, not one jot more. Thou canst not tell where one drop of water or one grain of sand will be tomorrow noon, and yet with thy impotence thou insultest the sun. Science, curse thee, thou vain toy, and cursed be all the things that cast man's eyes aloft to that heaven, whose live vividness but scorches him, as these old eyes are even now scorched with thy light, O sun. Level by nature to this earth's horizon are the glances of man's eyes, not shot from the crown of his head, as if God had meant him to gaze on his firmament. Curse thee, thou quadrant, dashing it to the deck. No longer will I guide my earthly way by thee, the level ship's compass, and the level dead reckoning, by log and by line. These shall conduct me, and show me my place on the sea. I, lighting from the boat to the deck. Thus I trample on thee, thou paltry thing that feebly pointest on high. Thus I split and destroy thee." As the frantic old man thus spoke and thus trampled with his live and dead feet, a sneering triumph that seemed meant for Ahab, and a fatalistic despair that seemed meant for himself, these passed over the mute, motionless Parsee's face. Unobserved he rose and glided away, while, awestruck by the aspect of their commander, the seamen clustered together on the forecastle, till Ahab, troubledly pacing the deck, shouted out, "To the braces! Up helm! Square in!" In an instant the yards swung round, and as the ship half-wheeled upon her heel, her three firm-seated graceful masts erectly poised upon her long, ribbed hull, seemed as the three Horatii pirouetting on one sufficient steed. Standing between the knightheads, Starbuck watched the Pequod's tumultuous way, and Ahab's also, as he went lurching along the deck. I have sat before the dense coal fire and watched it all aglow, full of its tormented flaming life, and I have seen it wane at last, down, down, to dumbest dust. Old man of oceans! Of all this fiery life of thine, what will at length remain but one little heap of ashes? "I," cried Stubb, "but sea-coal ashes, mind ye that, Mr. Starbuck, sea-coal, not your common charcoal." Well, well, I heard Ahab mutter, here's someone thrust these cards into these old hands of mine, swears that I must play them, and no others. And damn me, Ahab, but thou actest right. Live in the game, and die in it. Chapter 119. The Candles. Warmest climes but nourish the cruelest fangs. The tiger of Bengal crouches in spice groves of ceaseless verdure. Skies the most effulgent, but basket the deadliest thunders. Gorgeous Cuban-nosed tornadoes that never swept tame northern lands. So, too, it is that in these resplendent Japanese seas the mariner encounters the direst of all storms, the typhoon. It will sometimes burst from out that cloudless sky, like an exploding bomb upon a dazed and sleepy town. Towards evening of that day, the Pequod was torn of her canvas, and bare-poled was left to fight a typhoon which had struck her directly ahead. When darkness came on, sky and sea roared and split with the thunder, and blazed with the lightning that showed the disabled masts fluttering here and there with the rags which the first fury of the tempest had left for its after sport. Holding by a shroud, Starbuck was standing on the quarter-deck, at every flash of the lightning glancing aloft, to see what additional disaster might have befallen the intricate hamper there, while Stubb and Flask were directing the men in the higher hoisting and firmer lashing of the boats. But all their pains seemed naught. Though lifted to the very top of the cranes, the windward quarter-boat, Ahab's, did not escape. A great rolling sea, dashing high up against the reeling ship's high teetering side, stove in the boat's bottom at the stern, and left it again, all dripping through like a sieve. Bad work, Mr. Starbuck, said Stubb, regarding the wreck. But the sea will have its way. Stubb, for one, can't fight it. You see, Mr. Starbuck, a wave has such a great long start before it leaps, all round the world it runs, and then comes the spring. But as for me, all the start I have to meet it is just across the deck here. But never mind, it's all in fun, so the old song says. Sings. Oh, jolly is the gale, and a joker is the whale, a flourish in his tail. Such a funny, sporty, gamey, jesty, jokey, hokey-pokey lad is the ocean, oh! The scud all a-flyin'. That's his flip only foamin', when he stirs in the spicin'. Such a funny, sporty, gamey, jesty, jokey, hokey-pokey lad is the ocean, oh! Thunder splits the ships, but he only smacks his lips. A tastin' of this flip. Such a funny, sporty, gamey, jesty, jokey, hokey-pokey lad is the ocean, oh! Avast, Stubb, cried Starbuck. Let the typhoon sing, and strike his harp here in our rigging. But if thou art a brave man, thou wilt hold thy peace. But I am not a brave man. Never said I was a brave man. I am a coward, and I sing to keep up my spirits. And I tell you what it is, Mr. Starbuck, there's no way to stop my singing in this world but to cut my throat. And when that's done, 10 to 1 I sing ye the doxology for a wind-up. Madman, look through my eyes if thou hast none of thine own. What? How can you see better of a dark night than anybody else? Never mind how foolish. Here, cried Starbuck, seizing Stubb by the shoulder, and pointing his hand towards the weather bow. Markest thou not that the gale comes from the eastward, the very course Ahab is to run for Moby Dick? The very course he swung to this day noon? Now mark his boat there. Where is that stove? In the stern sheets, man, where he is wont to stand. His standpoint is stove, man. Now jump overboard, and sing away, if thou must. I don't half understand ye. What's in the wind? Yes, round the Cape of Good Hope is the shortest way to Nantucket, soliloquized Starbuck suddenly, heedless of Stubb's question. The gale that now hammers at us to stave us, we can turn it into a fair wind that will drive us towards home. Yonder, to windward, all is blackness of doom, but to leeward, homeward, I see it lightens up there, but not with the lightning. At that moment, in one of the intervals of profound darkness, following the flashes, a voice was heard at his side, and almost at the same instant a volley of thunder peals rolled overhead. "Who's there?" "Old Thunder," said Ahab, groping his way along the bulwarks to his pivot hole, but suddenly finding his path made plain to him by elbowed lances of fire. Now, as the lightning rod to a spire on shore is intended to carry off the perilous fluid into the soil, so the kindred rod which at sea some ships carry to each mast is intended to conduct it into the water. But as this conductor must descend to considerable depth, that its end may avoid all contact with the hull, and as moreover, if kept constantly towing there, it would be liable to many mishaps, besides interfering not a little with some of the rigging, and more or less impeding the vessel's way in the water. Because of all this, the lower parts of a ship's lightning rods are not always overboard, but are generally made in long slender links, so as to be the more readily hauled up into the chains outside, or thrown down into the sea, as occasion may require. "The rods! The rods!" cried Starbuck to the crew, suddenly admonished to vigilance by the vivid lightning that had just been darting flambeaux, to light Ahab to his post. "Are they overboard?" "Drop them over fore and aft." "Quick!" "Avast!" cried Ahab. "Let's have fair play here, though we be the weaker side. Yet I'll contribute to raise rods on the Himalayas and Andes, that all the world may be secured, but out on privileges." "Let them be, sir." "Look aloft!" cried Starbuck. "The corpusants! The corpusants!" All the yard arms were tipped with a pallid fire, and touched at each tri-pointed lightning rod end with 3 tapering white flames. Each of the 3 tall masts was silently burning in that sulphurous air, like 3 gigantic wax tapers before an altar. "Blast the boat!" "Let it go!" cried Stubb at this instant, as a swashing sea heaved up under his own little craft, so that its gunwale violently jammed his hand as he was passing a lashing. "Blast it!" But slipping backward on the deck, his uplifted eyes caught the flames, and immediately shifting his tone, he cried, "The corpusants have mercy on us all!" To sailors, oaths are household words. They will swear in the trance of the calm, and in the teeth of the tempest. They will imprecate curses from the topsail-yard arms, when most they teeter over to a seething sea. But in all my voyagings, seldom have I heard a common oath when God's burning finger has been laid on the ship, when his mean, tekel a parson, has been woven into the shrouds and the cordage. While this pallidness was burning aloft, few words were heard from the enchanted crew, who in one thick cluster stood on the forecastle, all their eyes gleaming in that pale phosphorescence, like a far-away constellation of stars. Relieved against the ghostly light, the gigantic jet negro, Daggoo, loomed up to thrice his real stature, and seemed the black cloud from which the thunder had come. The parted mouth of Tashtego revealed his shark-white teeth, which strangely gleamed as if they too had been tipped by corpusants, while lit up by the preternatural light, Queequeg's tattooing burned like satanic blue flames on his body. The tableau all waned at last with the pallidness aloft, and once more the Pequod and every soul on her decks were wrapped in a pall. A moment or 2 passed, when Starbuck, going forward, pushed against someone. It was Stubb. "What thinkest thou now, man? I heard thy cry. It was not the same in the song." No, it wasn't. I said the corpusants have mercy on us all, and I hope they will still." "But do they only have mercy on long faces? Have they no bowels for a laugh?" "And look ye, Mr. Starbuck, but it's too dark to look." "Hear me, then. I take that masthead flame we saw for a sign of good luck, for those masts are rooted in a hold that is going to be chock-a-block with sperm oil, D.C., and so all that sperm will work up into the masts, like sap in a tree." "Yes, our 3 masts will yet be as 3 spermaceti candles. That's the good promise we saw." At that moment Starbuck caught sight of Stubb's face slowly beginning to glimmer into sight. Glancing upwards, he cried, "See! See! and once more the high tapering flames were beheld with what seemed redoubled supernaturalness in their pallor. "The corpusants have mercy on us all," cried Stubb again. At the base of the mainmast, full beneath the doubloon and the flame, the Parsee was kneeling in Ahab's front, but with his head bowed away from him, while near by, from the arched and overhanging rigging, where they had just been engaged securing a spar, a number of the seamen, arrested by the glare, now cohered together, and hung pendulous, like a knot of numbed wasps from a drooping orchard twig. In various enchanted attitudes, like the standing, or stepping, or running skeletons in Herculaneum, others remained rooted to the deck, but all their eyes upcast. "Aye, aye, men," cried Ahab. "Look up at it. Mark it well. The white flame but lights the way to the white whale. Hand me those mainmast links there. I would fain feel this pulse, and let mine beat against it, blood against fire. So." Then turning, the last link held fast in his left hand, he put his foot upon the Parsee, and with fixed upward eye, and high-flung right arm, he stood erect before the lofty tri-pointed trinity of flames. "Oh, thou clear spirit of clear fire, whom on these seas I as Persian once did worship, till in the sacramental act so burned by thee, that to this hour I bear the scar, I now know thee, thou clear spirit, and I now know that thy right worship is defiance. To neither love nor reverence wilt thou be kind, and e'en for hate thou canst but kill, and all are killed. No fearless fool now fronts thee. I own thy speechless, placeless power, but to the last gasp of my earthquake life will dispute its unconditional, unintegral mastery in me. In the midst of the personified impersonal, a personality stands here, though but a point at best, whencesoe'er I came, wheresoe'er I go, yet while I earthly live, the queenly personality lives in me, and feels her royal rights. But war is pain, and hate is woe. Come in thy lowest form of love, and I will kneel and kiss thee, but at thy highest, come as mere supernal power, and though thou launchest navies of full-freighted worlds, there's that in here that still remains indifferent. O thou clear spirit, of thy fire thou madest me, and like a true child of fire, I breathe it back to thee." Sudden, repeated flashes of lightning. The 9 flames leaped lengthwise to thrice their previous height. Ahab, with the rest, closes his eyes, his right hand pressed hard upon them. "I own thy speechless, placeless power. Said I not so? Nor was it wrung from me, nor do I now drop these links. Thou canst blind, but I can then grope. Thou canst consume, but I can then be ashes. Take the homage of these poor eyes, and shudder hands." I would not take it. The lightning flashes through my skull, mine eyeballs ache and ache, my whole beaten brain seems as beheaded, and rolling on some stunning ground. Oh! Yet blindfold, yet will I talk to thee. Light though thou be, thou leapest out of darkness. But I am darkness leaping out of light, leaping out of thee. The javelins cease, open eyes, see, or not. There burn the flames. O thou magnanimous! Now I do glory in my genealogy. But thou art but my fiery father, my sweet mother, I know not. O cruel! What hast thou done with her? There lies my puzzle, but thine is greater. Thou knowest not how came ye, hence callest thyself unbegotten. Certainly knowest not thy beginning, hence callest thyself unbegun. I know that of me, which thou knowest not of thyself, O thou omnipotent. There is some unsuffusing thing beyond thee, thou clear spirit, to whom all thy eternity is but time, all thy creativeness mechanical. Through thee, thy flaming self, my scorched eyes do dimly see it. O thou foundling fire, thou hermit immemorial, thou too hast thy incommunicable riddle, thy unparticipated grief. Here again with haughty agony, I read my sire. Leap, leap up, and lick the sky. I leap with thee, I burn with thee, would fain be welded with thee, defyingly I worship thee. The boat, cried Starbuck. Look at thy boat, old man. Ahab's harpoon, the one forged at Perspire, remained firmly lashed in its conspicuous crotch, so that it projected beyond his whaleboat's bow, but the sea that had stove its bottom had caused the loose leather sheet to drop off, and from the keen steel barb there now came a level flame of pale, forked fire. As the silent harpoon burned there like a serpent's tongue, Starbuck grasped Ahab by the arm. God is against thee, old man. Forbear, 'tis an ill voyage. Ill begun, ill continued. Let me square the yards, while we may, old man, and make a fair wind of it homewards, to go on a better voyage than this. Overhearing Starbuck, the panic-stricken crew instantly ran to the braces, though not a sail was left aloft. For the moment all the aghast mates' thoughts seemed theirs. They raised a half-mutinous cry. But dashing the rattling lightning links to the deck, and snatching the burning harpoon, Ahab waved it like a torch among them, swearing to transfix with it the first sailor that but cast loose a rope's end. Petrified by his aspect, and still more shrinking from the fiery dart that he held, the men fell back in dismay, and Ahab again spoke. All your oaths to hunt the white whale are as binding as mine, and heart, soul, and body, lungs and life, old Ahab is bound. And that ye may know to what tune this heart beats, look ye here, thus I blow out the last fear. And with one blast of his breath he extinguished the flame. As in the hurricane that sweeps the plain, men fly the neighborhood of some lone, gigantic elm, whose very height and strength but render it so much the more unsafe, because so much the more a mark for thunderbolts. So at those last words of Ahab's many of the mariners did run from him in a terror of dismay. Chapter 120. The deck towards the end of the first night watch. Ahab standing by the helm. Starbuck approaching him. We must send down the maintopsail yard, sir. The band is working loose, and the lee lift is half-stranded. Shall I strike it, sir? Strike nothing, lash it. If I had skysail poles, I'd sway them up now. Sir, in God's name, sir? Well? The anchors are working, sir. Shall I get them inboard? Strike nothing, and stir nothing, but lash everything. The wind rises, but it has not got up to my tablelands yet. Quick, and see to it, by masts and keels. He takes me for the hunchback skipper of some coasting smack. Send down my maintopsail yard. Ho, glue-pots! Loftiest trucks were made for wildest winds, and this brain truck of mine now sails amid the cloud scud. Shall I strike that? Oh, none but cowards send down their brain trucks in tempest time. What a hoorish aloft there! I would e'en take it for sublime, did I not know that the colic is a noisy malady. Oh, take medicine, take medicine! Chapter 121. Midnight. The forecastle bulwarks. Stub and flask mounted on them, and passing additional lashings over the anchors there hanging. No, Stub, you may pound it not there as much as you please, but you will never pound into me what you were just now saying. And how long ago is it since you said the very contrary? Didn't you once say that whatever ship Ahab sails in, that ship should pay something extra on its insurance policy, just as though it were loaded with powder barrels aft and boxes of lucifers forward? Stop now, didn't you say so? Well, suppose I did? What then? I've part changed my flesh since that time, why not my mind? Besides, supposing we are loaded with powder barrels aft and lucifers forward, how the devil could the lucifers get a fire in this drenching spray here? Why, my little man, you have pretty red hair, but you couldn't get a fire now. Shake yourself. Your Aquarius, or the water-bearer flask, might fill pitchers at your coat collar. Don't you see, then, that for these extra risks the marine insurance companies have extra guarantees? Here are hydrants, flask. But hark, again, and I'll answer ye the other thing. First take your leg off from the crown of the anchor here, though, so I can pass the rope. Now listen. What's the mighty difference between holding a mast's lightning rod in the storm, and standing close by a mast that hasn't got any lightning rod at all in a storm? Don't you see, you timberhead, that no harm can come to the holder of the rod, unless the mast is first struck? What are you talking about, then? Not one ship in 100 carries rods, and Ahab, I man, and all of us, were in no more danger then, in my poor opinion, than all the crews in 10,000 ships now sailing the seas. Why, you kingpost, I suppose you would have every man in the world go about with a small lightning rod running up the corner of his hat, like a militia officer's skewered feather, and trailing behind like his sash. Why don't ye be sensible, Flask? It's easy to be sensible. Why don't ye, then? Any man with half an eye can be sensible. I don't know that, Stubb. You sometimes find it rather hard. Yes, when a fellow's soaked through, it's hard to be sensible, that's a fact. And I am about drenched with this spray. Never mind. Catch the turn there, and pass it. Seems to me we are lashing down these anchors now, as if they were never going to be used again. Tying these 2 anchors here, Flask, seems like tying a man's hands behind him. And what big generous hands they are, to be sure. These are your iron fists, hey? What a hold they have, too. I wonder, Flask, whether the world is anchored anywhere. If she is, she swings with an uncommon long cable, though. There, hammer the knot down, and we've done. So, next to touching land, lighting on deck is the most satisfactory. I say, just wring out my jacket skirts, will ye? Thank ye. They laugh at long togs so, Flask. But seems to me, a long-tailed coat ought always to be worn in all storms afloat. The tail's tapering down that way, sir, to carry off the water, ye see. Same with cocked hats. The cocks form gable-end e-troughs, Flask. No more monkey jackets and tarpaulins for me. I must mount a swallowtail and drive down a beaver. So. Hullo! Phew! There goes my tarpaulin overboard. Lord, Lord, that the winds that come from heaven should be so unmannerly. This is a nasty night, lad. Chapter 122. Midnight aloft. Thunder and lightning. The maintopsail yard. Tashtego passing new lashings around it. Stop that thunder. Plenty too much thunder up here. What's the use of thunder? We don't want thunder. We want rum. Give us a glass of rum. Chapter 123. The Musket. During the most violent shocks of the typhoon, the man at the Pequod's jawbone tiller had several times been reelingly hurled to the deck by its spasmodic motions, even though preventer tackles had been attached to it, for they were slack, because some play to the tiller was indispensable. In a severe gale like this, while the ship is but a tossed shuttlecock to the blast, it is by no means uncommon to see the needles in the compasses, at intervals, go round and round. It was thus with the Pequods. At almost every shock the helmsman had not failed to notice the whirling velocity with which they revolved upon the cards. It is a sight that hardly anyone can behold without some sort of unwonted emotion. Some hours after midnight, the typhoon abated so much that through the strenuous exertions of Starbuck and Stubb, one engaged forward and the other aft, the shivered remnants of the jib and fore and maintop sails were cut adrift from the spars, and went eddying away to leeward, like the feathers of an albatross, which sometimes are cast to the winds when that storm-tossed bird is on the wing. The 3 corresponding new sails were now bent and reefed, and a storm trysail was set further aft, so that the ship soon went through the water with some precision again, and the course, for the present, east-southeast, which he was to steer, if practicable, was once more given to the helmsman. For during the violence of the gale, he had only steered according to its vicissitudes. But as he was now bringing the ship as near her course as possible, watching the compass meanwhile, lo! A good sign. The wind seemed coming round astern. The foul breeze became fair. Instantly the yards were squared, to the lively song of "Ho! The fair wind! O ye ho, cheerly men!" the crew singing for joy that so promising an event should so soon have falsified the evil portent preceding it. In compliance with the standing order of his commander, to report immediately, and at any one of the 24 hours, any decided change in the affairs of the deck, Starbuck had no sooner trimmed the yards to the breeze, however reluctantly and gloomily, than he mechanically went below to apprise Captain Ahab of the circumstance. Ere knocking at his stateroom, he involuntarily paused before it a moment. The cabin lamp, taking long swings this way and that, was burning fitfully, and casting fitful shadows upon the old man's bolted door, a thin one, with thick splines inserted in place of upper panels. The isolated subterraneousness of the cabin made a certain humming silence to reign there, though it was hooped round by all the roar of the elements. The loaded muskets in the rack were shiningly revealed, as they stood upright against the forward bulkhead. Starbuck was an honest, upright man, but out of Starbuck's heart, at that instant when he saw the muskets, there strangely evolved an evil thought, but so blent with its neutral or good accompaniments that for the instant he hardly knew it for itself. "He would have shot me once," he murmured. "Yes, there's the very musket that he pointed at me, that one with the studded stock. Let me touch it, lift it. Strange, that I, who have handled so many deadly lances, strange, that I should shake so now. Loaded? I must see. Aye, and powder in the pan, that's not good. Best spill it, wait. I'll cure myself of this. I'll hold the musket boldly while I think. I come to report a fair wind to him. But how fair? Fair for death and doom? That's fair for Moby Dick. It's a fair wind that's only fair for that accursed fish. The very tube he pointed at me, the very one, this one, I hold it here. He would have killed me with the very thing I handle now. And he would fain kill all his crew. Does he not say he will not strike his spars to any gale? Has he not dashed his heavenly quadrant? And in these same perilous seas, gropes he not his way by mere dead reckoning of the error-abounding log? And in this very typhoon, did he not swear that he would have no lightning rods? But shall this crazed old man be tamely suffered to drag a whole ship's company down to doom with him? Yes, it would make him the wilful murderer of 30 men and more, if this ship come to any deadly harm. And come to deadly harm, my soul swears this ship will, if Ahab have his way. If, then, he were this instant put aside, that crime would not be his. Ha! Is he muttering in his sleep? Yes, just there, in there, he is sleeping. Sleeping? Aye, but still alive, and soon awake again. I can't withstand thee, then, old man. Not reasoning, not remonstrance, not entreaty wilt thou hearken to, all this thou scornest. Flat obedience to thy own flat commands, this is all thou breathest. Aye, and say'st the men have vowed thy vow, say'st all of us are Ahab's. Great God forbid, but is there no other way? No lawful way? Make him a prisoner to be taken home? What? Hope to wrest this old man's living power from his own living hands? Only a fool would try it. Say he were pinioned even, knotted all over with ropes and hawsers, chained down to ring bolts on this cabin floor, he would be more hideous than a caged tiger then. I could not endure the sight, could not possibly fly his howlings. All comfort, sleep itself, inestimable reason would leave me on the long intolerable voyage. What then remains? The land is hundreds of leagues away, and Loch Japan the nearest. I stand alone here upon an open sea, with 2 oceans and a whole continent between me and law. Aye, 'tis so. Is heaven a murderer when its lightning strikes a would-be murderer in his bed, tindering sheets and skin together? And would I be a murderer then, if— And slowly, stealthily, and half sideways looking, he placed the loaded musket's end against the door. On this level, Ahab's hammock swings within, his head this way, a touch, and Starbuck may survive to hug his wife and child again. Oh, Mary, Mary, boy, 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 but if I wake thee not to death, old man, who can tell to what unsound deep Starbuck's body this day week may sink, with all the crew? Great God, where art thou? Shall I? Shall I? The wind has gone down and shifted, sir. The fore and main topsails are reefed and set. She heads her course. Stern all. O Moby Dick, I clutch thy heart at last. Such were the sounds that now came hurtling from out the old man's tormented sleep, as if Starbuck's voice had caused the long dumb dream to speak. The yet leveled musket shook like a drunkard's arm against the panel. Starbuck seemed wrestling with an angel, but turning from the door, he placed the death tube in its rack, and left the place. He's too sound asleep, Mr. Stubb. Go thou down, and wake him, and tell him. I must see to the deck here. Thou knowst what to say. Chapter 124. The Needle. Next morning the not yet subsided sea rolled in long slow billows of mighty bulk, and striving in the Pequod's gurgling track, pushed her on like giants' palms outspread. The strong, unstaggering breeze abounded so, that sky and air seemed vast outbellying sails. The whole world boomed before the wind. Muffled in the full morning light, the invisible sun was only known by the spread intensity of his place, where his bayonet rays moved on in stacks. Emblazonings, as of crowned Babylonian kings and queens, reigned over everything. The sea was as a crucible of molten gold, that bubblingly leaps with light and heat. Long maintaining an enchanted silence, Ahab stood apart, and every time the teetering ship loweringly pitched down her bowsprit, he turned to eye the bright sun's rays produced ahead, and when she profoundly settled by the stern, he turned behind, and saw the sun's rearward place, and how the same yellow rays were blending with his undeviating wake. Ha, ha, my ship! Thou mightest well be taken now for the sea chariot of the sun. Ho, ho! All ye nations before my prow, I bring the sun to ye. Yoke on the further billows, hullo! A tandem, I drive the sea. But suddenly reined back by some counterthought, he hurried towards the helm, huskily demanding how the ship was heading. East so east, sir, said the frightened steersman. Thou least, smiting him with his clenched fist. Heading east at this hour in the morning, and the sun astern? Upon this every soul was confounded, for the phenomenon just then observed by Ahab had unaccountably escaped every one else. But its very blinding palpableness must have been the cause. Thrusting his head halfway into the binnacle, Ahab caught one glimpse of the compasses. His uplifted arm slowly fell. For a moment he almost seemed to stagger. Standing behind him Starbuck looked, and lo! The two compasses pointed east, and the Pequod was as infallibly going west. But ere the first wild alarm could get out abroad among the crew, the old man, with a rigid laugh, exclaimed, I have it! It has happened before. Mr. Starbuck, last night's thunder turned our compasses, that's all. Thou hast before now heard of such a thing, I take it. Aye, but never before has it happened to me, sir, said the pale mate, gloomily. Here, it must needs be said, that accidents like this have in more than one case occurred to ships in violent storms. The magnetic energy, as developed in the mariner's needle, is, as all know, essentially one with the electricity beheld in heaven. Hence it is not to be much marveled at that such things should be. Instances where the lightning has actually struck the vessel, so as to smite down some of the spars and rigging, the effect upon the needle has at times been still more fatal, all its lodestone virtue being annihilated, so that the before magnetic steel was of no more use than an old wife's knitting needle. But in either case, the needle never again, of itself, recovers the original virtue thus marred or lost, and if the binnacle compasses be affected, the same fate reaches all the others that may be in the ship, even were the lowermost one inserted into the kelson. Deliberately standing before the binnacle, and eyeing the transpointed compasses, the old man, with the sharp of his extended hand, now took the precise bearing of the sun, and satisfied that the needles were exactly inverted, shouted out his orders for the ship's course to be changed accordingly. The yards were hard up, and once more the Pequod thrust her undaunted bows into the opposing wind, for the supposed fair one had only been juggling her. Meanwhile, whatever were his own secret thoughts, Starbuck said nothing, but quietly he issued all requisite orders, while Stubb and Flask, who in some small degree seemed then to be sharing his feelings, likewise unmurmuringly acquiesced. As for the men, though some of them lowly rumbled, their fear of Ahab was greater than their fear of fate. But as ever before, the pagan harpooneers remained almost wholly unimpressed, or if impressed, it was only with a certain magnetism shot into their congenial hearts from inflexible Ahab's. For a space the old man walked the deck in rolling reveries. But chancing to slip with his ivory heel, he saw the crushed copper sight tubes of the Quadrant he had the day before dashed to the deck. "Thou poor, proud heaven-gazer and sun's pilot! Yesterday I wrecked thee, and today the compasses would fain have wrecked me. So, but Ahab is lord over the level lodestone yet. Mr. Starbuck, a lance without a pole, a topmaul, and the smallest of the sailmaker's needles. Quick!" Accessory, perhaps, to the impulse dictating the thing he was now about to do, were certain prudential motives, whose object might have been to revive the spirits of his crew by a stroke of his subtle skill, in a matter so wondrous as that of the inverted compasses. Besides, the old man well knew that to steer by trans-pointed needles, though clumsily practicable, was not a thing to be passed over by superstitious sailors, without some shudderings and evil portents. "Men," said he, steadily turning upon the crew, as the mate handed him the things he had demanded. "My men, the thunder turned old Ahab's needles, but out of this bit of steel Ahab can make one of his own, that will point as true as any." Abashed glances of servile wonder were exchanged by the sailors, as this was said, and with fascinated eyes they awaited whatever magic might follow. But Starbuck looked away. With a blow from the topmaul Ahab knocked off the steel head of the lance, and then handing to the mate the long iron rod remaining, bade him hold it upright, without its touching the deck. Then, with the maul, after repeatedly smiting the upper end of this iron rod, he placed the blunted needle endwise on the top of it, and less strongly hammered that, several times, the mate still holding the rod as before. Then going through some small strange motions with it, whether indispensable to the magnetizing of the steel, or merely intended to augment the awe of the crew, is uncertain, he called for linen thread, and moving to the binnacle, slipped out the two reversed needles there, and horizontally suspended the sail needle by its middle, over one of the compass cards. At first, the steel went round and round, quivering and vibrating at either end, but at last it settled to its place, when Ahab, who had been intently watching for this result, stepped frankly back from the binnacle, and pointing his stretched arm towards it, exclaimed, "Look ye, for yourselves, if Ahab be not lord of the level lodestone. The sun is east, and that compass swears it." One after another they peered in, for nothing but their own eyes could persuade such ignorance as theirs, and one after another they slunk away. In his fiery eyes of scorn and triumph, you then saw Ahab in all his fatal pride. Chapter 125. The Log and Line. While now the fated Pequod had been so long afloat this voyage, the log and line had but very seldom been in use. Owing to a confident reliance upon other means of determining the vessel's place, some merchantmen, and many whalemen, especially when cruising, wholly neglect to heave the log, though at the same time, and frequently more for form's sake than anything else, regularly putting down upon the customary slate the course steered by the ship, as well as the presumed average rate of progression every hour. It had been thus with the Pequod. The wooden reel and angular log attached hung, long untouched, just beneath the railing of the after bulwarks. Rains and spray had damped it, sun and wind had warped it, All the elements had combined to rot a thing that hung so idly. But heedless of all this, his mood seized Ahab, as he happened to glance upon the reel, not many hours after the magnet's scene, and he remembered how his quadrant was no more, and recalled his frantic oath about the level log in line. The ship was sailing plungingly. Astern the billows rolled in riots. "Forward there! Heave the log!" Two seamen came, the golden-hued Tahitian and the grizzly Manxman. "Take the reel, one of ye, I'll heave." They went towards the extreme stern on the ship's lee side, where the deck, with the oblique energy of the wind, was now almost dipping into the creamy, sidelong rushing sea. The Manxman took the reel, and holding it high up, by the projecting handle ends of the spindle, round which the spool of line revolved, so stood with the angular log hanging downwards, till Ahab advanced to him. Ahab stood before him, and was lightly unwinding some 30 or 40 turns to form a preliminary hand coil to toss overboard, when the old Manxman, who was intently eyeing both him and the line, made bold to speak. "Sir, I mistrust it. This line looks far gone. Long heat and wet have spoiled it." "'Twill hold, old gentleman." "Long heat and wet, have they spoiled thee?" "Thou seemst to hold." "Or truer perhaps, life holds thee, not thou it." "I hold the spool, sir." "But just as my captain says, with these gray hairs of mine 'tis not worth while disputing, specially with a superior who'll ne'er confess." "What's that?" "There now's a patched professor in Queen Nature's granite-founded college, but methinks he's too subservient." "Where wert thou born?" "In the little rocky Isle of Man, sir." "Excellent. Thou'st hit the world by that." "I know not, sir, but I was born there." "In the Isle of Man, hey?" "Well, the other way, it's good. Here's a man from man, a man born in once independent man, and now unmanned of man, which is sucked in, by what? Up with the reel. The dead, blind wall, but's all inquiring heads at last. Up with it. So. The log was heaved. The loose coils rapidly straightened out in a long dragging line astern, and then, instantly, the reel began to whirl. In turn, jerkingly raised and lowered by the rolling billows, the towing resistance of the log caused the old reelman to stagger strangely. "Hold hard." Snap! The overstrained line sagged down in one long festoon. The tugging log was gone. I crush the quadrant, the thunder turns the needles, and now the mad sea parts the log line. But Ahab can mend all. Haul in here, Tahitian. Reel up, Manxman. And look ye, let the carpenter make another log, and mend now the line. See to it. There he goes now. To him nothing's happened, but to me the skewer seems loosening out of the middle of the world. Haul in, Tahitian. These lines run whole, and whirling out, come in broken, and dragging slow. Ha, Pip! Come to help, Pip! Pip? Whom call ye Pip? Pip jumped from the whaleboat. Pip's missing. Let's see now, if ye haven't fished him up here, fisherman. It drags hard. I guess he's holding on. Jerk him, Tahiti. Jerk him off. We haul and no cowards here. Ho! There's his arm just breaking water. A hatchet. A hatchet. Cut it off. We haul and no cowards here. Captain Ahab. Sir, sir! Here's Pip, trying to get on board again. Peace, thou crazy loon! Cried the Manxman, seizing him by the arm. Away from the quarter-deck. The greater idiot ever scolds the lesser, muttered Ahab, advancing. Hands off from that holiness. Where sayest thou Pip was, boy? Astern there, sir, astern. Lo! Lo! And who art thou, boy? I see not my reflection in the vacant pupils of thy eyes. O God! That man should be a thing for immortal souls to sift through. Who art thou, boy? Bellboys, sir, ship's crier, ding dong ding. Pip! 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 100 pounds of clay reward for Pip. 5 feet high. Looks cowardly. Quickest known by that. Ding dong ding. Who's seen Pip the coward? There can be no hearts above the snow line. Oh, ye frozen heavens! Look down here. Ye did beget this luckless child, and have abandoned him, ye creative libertines. Here, boy, Ahab's cabin shall be Pip's home henceforth, while Ahab lives. Thou touchest my inmost center, boy. Thou art tied to me by cords woven of my heartstrings. Come, let's down. What's this? Here's velvet shark skin. Intently gazing at Ahab's hand, and feeling it. Ah, now, had poor Pip but felt so kind a thing as this, perhaps he had ne'er been lost. This seems to me, sir, as a man-rope, something that weak souls may hold by. Oh, sir, let old Perth now come and rivet these 2 hands together, the black one with the white, for I will not let this go. Oh, boy, nor will I thee, unless I should thereby drag thee to worse horrors that are here. Come, then, to my cabin. Lo, ye believers in God's all goodness, and in man all ill, lo you. See the omniscient God's oblivious of suffering man, and man, though idiotic, and knowing not what he does, yet full of the sweet things of love and gratitude. Come! I feel prouder leading thee by thy black hand than though I grasped an emperor's. There go 2 daft ones now, muttered the old Manxman. One daft with strength, the other daft with weakness. But here's the end of the rotten line, all dripping too. Mend it, eh? I think we had best have a new line altogether. I'll see Mr. Stubb about it.